when I saw the internet in the AOL days, I was enthralled. Like I knew the internet was going to change things.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of the Jeff Heilman Project. We have one of our longtime friends with us today. 2005. We have Tyler Smith, who is one of our besties. I mean, I think you and Jeff, you and Tyler probably talk on the phone as buddies, like more than anybody. And he's, he's been so good about like introducing you, and iron sharpens iron. He's brought books to you, he's brought forums to you, and you likewise to him. And I'm just really happy. I'm going to be a fly on the wall today's podcast, and I want to just let you guys do your thing. But if I can interject at all, that'd be great. But anyways, hey everybody, welcome Tyler and Jeff. Is there anything you want to say to set up our buddy here?
For the folks out there listening, we're talking to somebody who is probably one of the most forward-thinking people in my ecosystem. Tyler Smith started me thinking along the lines of frame control and selling at enterprise level selling when I was in enterprise sales and not doing it well, and he was not in it and could have easily made the transition to it, in which he's done. He started a blog in 2006 or 7 that reached critical mass and created financial independence almost for him, and he'll talk a little bit about slyblogguys.com. He was merging the high tech, high touch of humanity and community building 15 or 18 years ago. He has a huge network of people. He comes from a small town in Northern California and made bright lights, big city, big man on campus status at one of the most prestigious private universities in the world. I'll talk a little bit about that. And yet he is still just as calm, cool, and collected country boy, as comfortable with pickup trucks and people that chew tobacco as he is in the boardroom with people that wear suits and live in multi-million-dollar houses. We have a real treat on the phone with us today on this Zoom call with Tyler Smith, and I'm so excited. We might actually, we're early into this, just a couple minutes in, but I'm already thinking that we might need to do a part 2 because there's just so much that you guys can gain from Tyler's story. And we'll be a fly on the wall a little bit here too, because I want everybody out there to understand that when you have somebody who comes from a tiny town, who's got heart valve issues from birth and has to go through multiple surgeries throughout his life, and
Tyler's
almost
an
died.
overcomer, that's for sure.
A couple times almost dying. Probably could have played professional baseball if he had not dealt with cardiac valve issues, and even tried out and made it through the first couple of rounds of cuts for AAA baseball coming out of school. Was a professional racquetball player for a period. He's done a very successful blog that's gone on to do affiliate programs and marketing. He was the best person that we ever sponsored in our multi-level business back when we were doing that in 2005, 6, and 7. A great people person, a great family man in his own right. I just want to welcome my buddy of almost 20 years, Tyler Smith from San Martin, California. Welcome.
Thank you. I think you might have embellished some of my stats, but I'll appreciate it.
It's kind of my job. But Tyler, my beer drinking buddy, what is up? What are you working on? What are you seeing? I want to know about all of it. What's going on with Airbnbs? What's going on with raising capital? Tell us about Turo. What was your experience like doing that? And what's life like having a job when you don't need one and haven't needed one for years since you sold your father-in-law's house that you were buying from him?
Yeah, I mean, I think the market's an interesting place right now because we have like such a convergence of business cycles that it's going to lead to some pretty amazing opportunities in the next 24 to 36 months. In my view, it's funny. I actually had a call with one of my mentors today, who's been always kind of someone who I want to emulate it in the ability to have forward thinking, and forward looking ideas and whatnot. And
Have you talked with me about this guy before? Is he one of the guys you're doing funding with, or is he a different guy that I don't know about?
Yeah, he was my real estate investment professor in college, and
That's right.
yeah, and just the way his mind thinks from in a real estate perspective, and just looking at the markets and all that stuff is always fascinated with me. Like, um, there was a scene in Silicon Valley where I don't know if you remember that show or if you watched it.
Yeah.
And so he goes in and the guy's like eating like hamburgers and they have sesame seeds on the buns. And then there's like, he like pontificates on like this long, like vertical chain of where those like sesame seeds, and he makes this investment decision because of a sesame seed. And that's kind of like when I talk to Paul, it's kind of like the way he thinks, like you'll see one thing and then look at the 9 different steps that occur beyond that and realize that there's an opportunity there because of this one micro thing. And so it's always
it's probably setting up for a fail here, but I should ask the question: how right has he been in your experience?
I haven't seen him be wrong. That's the thing. And in the real estate world, and where it's in his domain.
Sure.
And so, he's the one that told me that the 2008 crash was going to happen.
Wow.
And I'm running around for 2 years telling people like,
sky's falling.
Like like there's going to be a correction. Just be prepared for it. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? This is the Bay Area. Like housing prices will never fall. Like you'll never see this.
And then didn't you pull the trigger on Nelson's house like right in that period?
Yeah, we closed about 6 months before the crash.
Okay.
So one of the things I had learned from him was you don't make money when you sell a house. You make money when you buy a house or any asset, right? And so like the reason I bought the house and it was because I saw the value in it. I mean, there was family reasons and whatnot, but from a financial sense, I don't ever think I would have done the deal if it didn't make financial sense.
Exactly.
In this case, it made a lot of financial sense because it was the worst house on the street. Well, second worst house, but and we were able to get it without putting much capital down because we're through the agreement with my father-in-law.
Yeah.
We were able to acquire it for little or no money down and make improvements to it.
And you did make a lot of improvements to it. The whole downstairs area that you had in the kitchen and the bottom parlor.
Yeah, eventually we ended up, before we sold it, like redoing the whole entire house. And so it just became and then there's a bit of a stroke of luck that Apple decided to put their spaceship 2 streets over. So
right. That obviously.
So I mean, I always knew it was like that property was going to do something with it because HP was there before, but yeah, I didn't know it was going to be Apple, and then it was going to be this world-class
monstrosity. Yeah, the huge campus that became the epicenter of the entire technology world was 2 blocks away from your house. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 streets. So it was pretty crazy.
So what do you see? What can we glean? I don't own real estate. I've never bought any real estate, and I've listened to a lot of people talk that, it's not single family homes, it's multifamily. You want to go apartment communities. It's better to buy a cash flow property that you can add value to versus building something from scratch, and on and on. I've gone to Secret Knock, which is Greg Reed's conference down in San Diego, where he had a guy that had made $1 billion just on undeveloped land, like plotting out fastest growing MSAs juxtaposed against the center of town. And then you go out from the town center, the 2 biggest streets that cross in the middle of town, and you go out, his formula was 8 miles. You go out 8 miles from town, and based on that, the kind of the 80-20 rule breaks off at the 8 mile mark, to where anything outside of 8 miles further than whatever's been developed, you're going to get for pennies on the dollar. And you wait a couple years, and all of a sudden Walmart and Home Depot want to go in and buy it from you for 10x of what you paid for it. What can we glean from what you're learning in the macroeconomic scale through the lens of this real estate expert that you've been getting mentorship from?
Well, so his whole thing was always business cycles, and so there's a variety of cycles that occur that are different. You have construction, you have interest rates, you have construction. I don't know. You have construction, interest rates. You have a variety of different cycles. I can't think of them off the top of my head right now.
Sure.
It's been a long day, but when you look at all these cycles and kind of where they're going, I mean, you look at inflation, you look at consumer spending, like all these different things that are taking on in the economy and where they're going. Like, and then there's points in history where you've seen where they've all lined up, where they're at now, and you can then kind of see what's going to happen next because it's math, and math is pretty consistent.
Yeah.
And so, occasionally you might have some type of interruption, which would be like some kind of world event, like a war or pandemic or something like that
Sure.
disrupts it. But outside of governmental interference or world events, you can kind of see where it's going to go. And I mean, we're in a pretty dire situation, I think, in the next 36 months. I don't think anyone would really argue. There's going to be certain people that argue against this, like real estate agents, because they just don't want to believe it.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I think you're going to see pretty dramatic falls in housing prices. I don't think interest rates are coming down anytime soon. They keep talking about it, but I think it's hope, not reality in a lot of these senses. Inflation's still going. People's dollar, their consumer spending, you're going to see that. I mean, we've already seen it drop off the board. It's like, start looking at, actually one big indicator to look at is just watch automotive ads. And anytime they offer like zero money down or very low interest rate,
right,
the economy's in the crapper.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that means people aren't spending money, like the big purchase items.
Yeah.
Look at airline prices right now. Look at I was looking at hotel prices in San Francisco last weekend because I was thinking of staying in a hotel after an event, and you could get a hotel room for $180.
Yeah, we got this weekend we're going into San Francisco,
Going to
and
see
we got
Charlie
a
Brown.
hotel, the A Loft, for like $100 for the night on a Saturday night, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Saturday night in
Yeah,
the city
I
for
mean,
$100.
What does that tell you, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Like,
right.
that would've been a
Occupancy is at
$400
30%.
room last year.
Yeah,
exactly right.
So interesting. If you could talk with us for a minute, I was talking, Jeff, we were talking about his social media account and his
Hashtag blow up.
What is it, Leaping Obstacles, or is that just what you're using for your motto?
That's my Instagram
Your
and TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about. All right, so first of all,
I want to hear about
we
Leaping
could
Obstacles.
wait till the end of the call, but first of all, what platforms are you on regularly? What are you posting on?
Instagram is the main platform because it feeds into Facebook.
And Andrew, if you when you're putting together the video part of the podcast, if you could put a little clip of his Leaping Obstacles, it's pretty fascinating.
Well, so I mean, I'll give a little short history for people that don't know me, and then I'll tell you why I chose Leaping Obstacles as a name.
Please do.
I mean, you guys probably get it, but someone who doesn't know me won't get it. So
you're sitting down, so they won't.
Yeah.
The quick. The 30-second version is I was born with a congenital heart defect. I had 4 open heart surgeries by the time I was 12. In 2017, at the age of 39, went in for my 5th open heart surgery. Things did not go as planned. Died on the operating table a couple times, 3 times actually. Ended up in a coma for 7 days, in which I got what's called compartment syndrome and got a blood clot above my right knee, and it cut off all the circulation basically from my right calf down. And so I became what's called a below the knee amputee. And so I wear a prosthetic device below my right knee. And Leaping Obstacles, because of all this stuff, I've been able to get through quite a few obstacles in my life. And then being one-legged, I thought it was kind of funny that I'm leaping over them because I'm one-legged. But then it kind of became a really good name because I was on a coaching call, and there was a guy that was a guest speaker by the name of Andy Elliott, and he said a few things and really got me thinking that I wanted to do something really hard physically. Like I've always liked to do really hard things,
Yeah.
and push myself. And it had been a while since I'd done anything on a physical level, and I saw a video of me just scrolling through some pictures one day. Like it was actually the next day after I heard Andy speak, and I saw a video of me jump roping, kind of messing around. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get good at jump roping. Like
Mm.
that would be really hard considering I only have one leg
Yeah.
Yeah.
to do it, and I can't really use
Can't really
like
push
the right
off
leg.
the
I can
right
kind of
leg.
bounce off of, but it doesn't. I don't have an ankle, so I don't have any like projection. Like
Mm.
I don't get any projection from it or whatnot. And so yeah, so then it became like fitting since I'm jumping around over these jump ropes.
And you went from he was saying before you got here, Jeff, that he's like at the max was like 50,000 views or something like that, like a lot of views and shares of people sharing.
I don't
this.
think we have 50,000 views of this podcast in
Whoa.
the last year. That's
Oh.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, so each video on average got just under, like probably around 700 to 800 views across Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
That's
so over 90 days, like that
Well,
adds up.
it's so much cardio, and it's so much
Yeah.
exercise and balance and stability. How did you feel? Did you feel healthier throughout the process, or did you lose weight, or was there any kind of other benefit that you received from doing it?
Well, it was funny. I was already I'd already switched my eating of a while, like earlier in the year. So I was down, I think just under 20 pounds
Wow.
You lost
already
20
for the
pounds?
year. Yeah, I've lost almost 40 pounds this year.
Wow.
But yeah, it what's funny is it did change my physique. Like I was losing weight, but my actual physique changed because of it. Like you don't realize how much you use your forearms when you're jump roping because it's like what's turning the jump roping.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And then like my posture actually got like really good because like you want to stay very upright and when you're doing it. And so for like half hour a day, I'm upright jumping rope in like a very postured position, and like your muscles form and whatnot. It's been really good.
Let's pivot backwards in time from the jump roping and from the Instagram that you're doing today and kind of giving a voice to amputees and giving a voice to people overcoming stuff. Let's go all the way back to your experience when you started talking about Time Warner Cable, like around 2000, 2001, and how that pivots into, you start losing your hair earlier in your life, and then you start shaving your head, and then you start creating community on Sly Bald Guys around that, and kind of the evolution of your engagement in media, and then transferring that into social media, which wasn't even really a thing. Like 2005, nobody was talking about social media in 2005. It wasn't even a thing.
Yeah, let me back up like even further. When I saw the internet in the AOL days, I was enthralled. Like I knew the internet was going to change things way beyond what I think a lot of people thought that weren't in the technology world. And I wasn't.
Right.
I was in high school essentially, like, or even before that, middle school, and so the first company I worked for in the Silicon Valley was a social media company before it was called social media, and it was a company called eCircles where you created your own private like social media account where you invited your friends and everybody interacted in a private capacity.
That's like before MySpace.
Yeah, way before MySpace.
Jeez.
And so like the only thing similar to it was like e-groups, which became Yahoo groups, but it wasn't really similar. It was kind of adjacent to it.
Right.
But that was actually like Google Circles, like was actually really close to eCircles.
Yeah.
Like Google Circles busted too, but like
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I had I had this understanding of how the internet can bring people together and exchange information. And that company went defunct. Eventually, I got laid off 6 months after joining it, but the idea was already planted in my brain. And then I happened to land at a company that we developed the software that managed cable advertising companies like Time Warner, Charter.
Right.
So if you see a local cable ad, it's good chance, about 30% chance I'm the jerk that made that happen. So, and they still use that same software today because it was way ahead of its time.
What was that software?
It was called Eclipse.
Wow.
It was by a company called Cam Systems, and I think like Caden or Koldesky Group. I don't even know who owns it now. It's gone through so many
I forgot
hands.
about that.
We were a company nobody had ever heard of, but everybody was affected by, because
Wow.
without our software, you wouldn't have seen a cable ad.
Wow.
Essentially, like a local cable ad, like your local car dealership.
So you basically been, and that would have been, when did you get that first job at eCircles?
Usually that was 99.
Okay. Yeah. That was before the bubble burst.
Yeah. So I was
it
here during the
cranking at
heyday
that
of the
point.
.com boom, having fun, like startup parties every weekend and every week, and seeing people get BMWs just for joining a company. Like, that was absurd. Like, I even knew back then, I was like
Not
things are out of
sustainable.
control when you get a BMW just for joining a company.
Yeah,
Like,
signing bonus at 22, and it's a Beamer.
Yeah, like, I mean, the amount of money we were supposedly worth on paper at the time was stupid. And
yeah,
it was all vapor, essentially. But I mean, some people it wasn't, because they got the cash out early, and it turned into real cash for them. But
yeah,
it was a fun time, and the really cool thing was, it was so entrepreneurial here, and the Bay Area really still is, in the Silicon Valley and whatnot. But at that time, it was just, it's all like, you couldn't go to Starbucks, you couldn't go to dinner, you couldn't go to the grocery store without hearing conversation about people creating new businesses, or working for a new business, and how they were changing the world and all this stuff, because this platform thing called the internet was like wild, wild west, and there were no rules. You had to go like make your own rules. And so, but then when I jumped into the cable advertising world, with that mentality, I started seeing how the law, this is an established industry, and this is the industry that really shifted everyone's buying habits. Still, like, the internet hadn't got, because there was no social media quite yet, outside of like eCircles and like these few small groups, like, and I mean, and a banner ad, right? And Google's like little banner ad or little ads on the thing.
Yep.
Outside of that, like, the big dollars were still in cable and broadcast television buys.
Yeah.
I mean, bigger than newspaper.
I remember like 2016, the big news was that there was more money being spent in advertising on the internet than there was in cable TV. Like, it crossed over in 2016 or 2017. And that was a huge thing, because you're talking about TV's been around for 80 years and it's getting disrupted in 4.
Yeah. I mean, I was 23 years old going into $100 million advertising organizations and having to teach them how to run their business with our software.
Wow.
And like, there was a couple times they wanted to kick me out of their office because I'm some 23-year-old punk and I'm talking to a 60-year-old guy who's been in the industry for 40 years. And what do you know? And so
you were a punk, but that's okay. So was I.
I was, but like,
Hey everybody, this is Jessica. I'm so excited to offer to you this new service and this ability that you have to text in your questions, comments. Maybe you have some situations that you'd love for Jeff and Jessica to try to tackle along with you. You can text us now at 203-646-1472. Your phone carrier may have standard rates that apply, it being a text, but this is a free service from us to you, in which we would like to participate with you in an ongoing conversation about how we can help and what we can possibly do for you. Looking forward to hearing from you soon.
but I also made them a lot of money. And so but what I got to see was really how the back end workings, like the really inner workings of how the ad buys occur. Like, why do people buy the way they do? What was the most effective way to buy cable inventory, and like how did that really drive sales, and what became a successful, like what would a successful commercial and copy look like versus like, your local plumber who wants to put he and his family on the ad, which doesn't sell anything, like without good copy, and like the importance of copy and the importance of the timing of the ad, and the demographic and your market and who's watching it and all that stuff, and seeing how that was like converging with the internet, but at the same time the internet was leapfrogging it, and watching it all in real time was quite the experience. And then because we were on the forefront of what we were doing, we were in a lot of these conversations, because you got to remember the cable companies own the internet. Like
That's
they were
right.
your access point outside of
Your
like
ISPs.
AT&T and a few like telecommunications companies. Like the cable companies were the ones that started owning like access to the internet. And so we're in conversations, and I'm hearing conversations at trade shows and seeing where they're trying to do with all this content. I mean, I remember meeting with Brian Roberts, actually with Cisco, your old stomping grounds.
Yeah.
And him telling us, like, because we were looking at, well, this was a little later when I went into the video on demand world, but him talking about, how they wanted to make content available, like every piece of content available through Comcast.
Yeah.
And then they wanted to be able to monetize that through advertising.
Yeah. Cisco even started shipping specialty servers that were designed just to be really fast to do multi-threaded video delivery.
A VOD pump.
VOD
and
pumps,
like our software was so I wrote that, like sat down and helped write the APIs or the specs, not the APIs, but the industry specs that actually told the VOD pump what to do. And the software that I was working on at the time by a company called Black Arrow, which is now Cadence Solutions, was the one that basically was the OS on top of the VOD pump.
God, all these names coming back. I forgot about all these things that you had done in content delivery. So, all right, so let's bring it home, a soft close on our meeting here. And again, if we need to do a part 2, we absolutely can. This is super. This is super interesting. Go ahead.
I'm curious. You're highly technical. Obviously, you're talking about writing code, and it seems like you're highly technical. You're highly intellectual, but you also have this community-centric person. Like
there's nobody who's better frat brother than Tyler Smith.
Everybody knows Tyler Smith. You can you say hi to where do you feel
extremely good looking?
Where do you feel coming out of
beautiful
college?
Gray beard.
Coming out of college, going into, I am sure just the sheer amount of, math and logistics and like being into your zone and the coding and all that. Like I know I don't know what that world's like, but being a producer and like producing content and just the hours of editing and deleting and like you get into your own zone. Where does the energy come from, or what fostered in you this community person, this outreach for Slybald guys, this outreach for
Redding, California.
Social media, this baseball, racquetball teams and baseball player? Like, where does the whole sense of community for you come from, that desire to want to be with other people?
Well, I think it really comes down to my parents. My parents are very social people. You guys have met my parents. And so we were always like out socializing. Like my dad played softball on his company softball team, and we would all, like the entire company would meet in Bend, Oregon every summer. Like people from 50, I don't know how many states would come out, and so then all the kids would play together. And like, so every summer I'm growing up going to this huge community through his workplace, watching that. Like,
plus you guys were kind of a big deal. You guys were kind of, sorry to interrupt you, Tyler, but you guys were kind of a big deal in Redding, in that your mom was in sales and did well. Your dad was in sales and did well. You had a great house, grew up on a cul-de-sac where you played ball with, I remember going up there with you and staying with your mom and dad. Like 3 or 4 of your best friends all lived on the same cul-de-sac. I mean, at least it seemed that way.
Yeah, and it's funny because you came in later. Like that wasn't the case when I was younger. I mean, like my mom worked at the college, and then my dad was like a middle manager as a civil engineer. I mean, we never wanted for anything. It's not that and
Yeah.
but I mean, Reading's a small town, and my parents were white collar professionals, and so
Yeah.
like they traveled in a lot of the circles, but you know they were also friends with everyone, and that's what I learned. I mean,
Yeah.
we had friends across all of the occupational spectrums and stuff like that, and like if it wasn't the softball stuff, it was the people we were going to the lake with on the weekends, or the people we were snow skiing with in the winters. I mean, there was always just people around, and so I learned a lot of playground skills, right? Because
Yeah.
the kids were just shoveled out of the house, like go play,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like
Don't come home until dark.
When I think of Reading,
Yeah.
I grew up going to Reading. I have a special connection with Reading growing up too, and that I lived in San Jose, but my stepmom, my stepmom's mom lived in Red Bluff, so we would go see Virginia, and then her uncle had a house up off Iron Mountain Road in Reading,
Keswick.
Keswick, like up by the mine, right? It was like basically the last house on Iron Mountain Road before you get to the chain, keeping people from driving across it right after they close the mine. And so it was like 10 acres that my stepmom's grandmother or great grandmother like homesteaded, up there with a little creek that ran through it, and this piece of junk house that was held together with literally river rock that had been mixed, mortar mixed on property, and then river rock assembled to make this little 1,500 square foot house on this 10 acres up there. And so we would go up there, I don't know, 6 or 8 times a year, every year from, I want to say 1980 until we just finally quit going up there. I got out of school, and it was boring, right? We didn't like going up there. None of our friends, we didn't get to see our friends on the weekends.
There's no mall. I know.
There is a mall. There is a mall, but
There's a mall. It's just not.
My parents didn't want to go. My parents didn't want to go to the mall. They wanted to go to Whiskeytown Lake and then hang out and just be in nature and get away from Silicon Valley. So, I spent a lot of time at Whiskeytown Lake and a lot of time at Keswick Dam and up at Shasta and driving out to Lassen. I know your family had some property out there by Mount Lassen. And so getting to know Williams and the Wendy's that you would stop at on your way up because it was at the halfway mark, and
split pea soup, right?
and split pea soup and all that
Well,
stuff.
that's the other direction.
That's the other direction?
Yeah, that's when you're going south on I-5, not on
But I
Oh
spent
my gosh.
quite a bit of time up there as a kid, in the summers especially.
Yeah.
And
to think you guys never ran into each other at the time growing up.
Yeah, he actually probably knew my cousin and a couple of her buddies and stuff. But there was a water slide park. There was a
Waterworks Park.
Waterworks Park. I remember that. My point in that is that Reading is like, Reading today is probably where everybody else was in the valley in 2000, and in 1980 it was like the 1960s. Like, you leave your doors unlocked, nobody, there's no crime. It's like this insulated, larger than medium sized farming community that had enough technology and a hospital and a small airport and stuff that it wasn't a podunk town by any means, but it seemed like growing up when we would go up there, like people were doing things that they were doing in the 60s when I grew up going there in the 80s. I don't know. Is that a fair assessment, would you say?
No, it is. So Reading's a fascinating place, and I hate to talk about it because I don't want anyone to go there.
Yeah, right?
Like, mess it up. But
Stay away.
It's a very unique community.
Yeah.
I haven't seen much
really,
like it.
It's really funny because, like, people have never been there. They look at whatever, and they make these assumptions about it. And a lot of the assumptions aren't incorrect. They're just not 100% accurate. And so, I mean, you have these quiet industries. There's a lot of wealthy people in Reading from industries you wouldn't think of, right? Like, the third largest landowner in America lives in Reading.
Mm.
He owns Sierra Pacific Lumber. And so, and you have, like, there was I remember back in the 80s, there was like this, it was like a luxury, like group, like hair and shampoos and like conditioners and so like whatever. I should know the term because I have a website that sells this type of stuff, but like not shampoos, obviously. But anyways, like bath
Skincare,
products,
ladies and
right?
gentlemen.
Bath products,
Skincare.
bath products,
skincare, and bath products. Yeah, and so the I mean, you had like it was like one of the top brands in the world that was like out of Reading. You know, like like we used to tour the factories for like as a field trip when we were kids, and you take home little samples and use them and stuff like that. And then like Skyway Bicycles was up there, and like
I
you had
didn't
all
know
these
that.
like
Nice.
and it was such an interesting little place, and because every once in a while you got people that move in there from the big city and bring stuff, and then it would just kind of become like its own little community. Like we had like we were like a skateboard like and like surf and skate was huge up there because it wasn't surfing waves. It was like in the ocean. It was surfing waves behind a boat. Like
yeah.
you want to talk about wakeboarding. I mean, one of the places that became prolific was Shasta Lake,
Yeah.
Mm.
you know, and the Sacramento, like all the guys from the Delta bringing it up and hitting the Shasta, and then us taking off with it and stuff like that, and skateboarding, like us building ramps and abandoned properties and stuff like that, and and then you having pro skaters show up because it's literally the only ramp north of Sacramento,
Right.
and stuff like
That's
that.
right.
And so it was an interesting place to grow up because you got exposure to a lot of stuff, but at the same time you got insulated from a lot of the world as well.
So I think, and Jessica brings up a really good point about Reading and your sense of connection. You have more friends, more connections, more ties, even though I've never heard or seen any ambition from you to run for politics. If you were a politician, you would crush it just because of your ability to connect with people, your huge networks of people, your country boy simplicity and wicked technology smarts. Can you give us, we try to get people on this call to give us 3 smart things about disparate things kind of coming together, like technology and communities, social media and advertising, cable TV and the infrastructure behind it that has to do with how ads are purchased, et cetera. Can you give us, for the young person, the people who listen to our show are typically young men and women between the age of 25 and 35, somewhere in there. They're not just starting out in their careers, but they're starting to recognize that personal development, that reading books, that hanging out with the right type of people is going to create that kind of separation in their career between where they are right now and where they want to be by the time they get into their late 30s to early 40s. So can you give us 3 smart things that we can do to be successful in the area of social media, connecting with our community, making money, playing the real estate game, and you can just do stream of consciousness, anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, so I'll touch on a couple of the points. I think the first thing is we're heading back to real community. We've had, I mean, almost 2 decades of division through social media, right? So the next big platforms in the social media, and I use it in quotes because it's going to look different, are going to be actually driving people together in a community aspect rather than driving apart. I think everybody's tired of being driven apart and talking about their differences. They all want to find their similarities and come together as a community. And I also think that's going to bring a lot of people together in a physical form too. I think things are going to drive people more in a physical community as well. I think you might start seeing living arrangements and stuff like that where they're done more based on a community versus like an individual basis.
Like the mobile home park trend of the 60s or something.
Yeah,
where
we saw that with Mike Williams was one of our
community center, and then
that's right,
houses around that.
Former guest of ours, Mike Williams, talked about, as he was consulting with Tony Hsieh, who built Zappos. He was on retainer with them for 4 years, and one of the things that Tony Hsieh did after he built Zappos and sold it for $1 billion to to Amazon was he bought a country clubhouse at the end of the street behind a gate on a golf course next to a river and hated it because it was so isolated that the money then became a shield between him and what he called number of collisions per square foot, which was how he built Zappos. That the concept of lots of collisions per square foot led to a more innovative company, better diversity, etc. So what he did was he bought an old apartment, a motel in downtown Las Vegas, scraped it, and then put 20 Airstream mobile homes on it in a configuration where he would rent some of them out. He would keep some for corporate apartments. He lived in one. Mike Williams lived next door to him in one. They had a llama or an alpaca that would walk around in a campfire and like a pool to try to create that sense of community, exactly like what you're talking about. And here you've got, Tony Hsieh, arguably one of the wealthiest people in the world, and he's literally that's his personal living condition. It's not some TED Talk or some speech that he's doing at Davos at the World Economic Forum. That's how he lived. He actually did that because he didn't want to be alone. The country club billionaire who's alone behind a gate.
Yeah. No, I know. He was actually my buddy's neighbor in that country club.
Oh, is that right?
Literally next door neighbors.
Was it Reading? Right? No, I'm kidding.
It was not in Reading. That was in Las Vegas.
No, it was in Vegas.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's one of my fraternity brothers.
Oh, wow.
One.
But yeah, and I think on the second point is and this is a term that everybody's using, but AI, I don't think anybody's talking about AI, the way it's really going to affect the world. But if you're not, AI is like discovering the internet in the early 90s. Like if you're not discovering AI right now, you're going to be left behind in all aspects of your life. Like it's just becoming one of these things where it will give you so many time-saving advantages in your life that the faster you jump on and start learning the way it can save you time, the more you're going to be able to accomplish in your life and like create ease in your life.
We have 5 minutes left. Let's double click on that. Give us 2 smart things inside of one of your 3 smart things with related to AI. So what are you using AI for, Tyler? How are you using it?
So I'm building copilots or GPTs right now. I'm actually building one for Slyball Guys, which is my head shaving website that you guys have referenced a couple of times, where I'm going to aggregate all the information into a GPT or a copilot, which is Microsoft's term, which is essentially my own container AI, like container that you can go to and ask questions, and it will take all of the information that's been learned on that site
since 2005
18 years or whatever it is.
Oh my
since
God.
2006, and then you'll be able to interact with that data as if it were like a human that's taken all of it and can now analyze it and provide you feedback.
Wow.
And so
there's your part 2, by the way. Holy moly. Okay. And then what's another way? That's a huge way to do it, but keep going.
Yeah. So like that's the other thing, like with AI is all this data that's out there now. Like we have all this data on the internet that's lost because nobody goes to it, especially in these communities that guys like me built in the early 2000s before there were the Facebooks and the Quoras and these mega communities. So you have all these individual communities that are still on the internet. The data is still there in what used to be called like a billboard or forum.
Yeah, bulletin board. Yeah.
Bulletin board. And so now you can take all that rich information and have access to it at your fingertips. You don't have to search
and get contextual relevance throughout history versus just something that somebody's done in the last year.
Yeah. So like now that all starts coming back to the surface.
That's really
the cream rises to the top even more now.
Well,
so first we had communities, second we had AI, and in the last 3 minutes, what's number 3, Tyler?
Local. So I'm going to be part of this revolution, but you're going to see local come back. Like I think Amazon's done a phenomenal job, right? Bringing us mass products like quickly.
And during COVID when we were desperate for deliveries a lot of times.
Yeah. And that highlighted something that they still couldn't meet the demand.
Right.
And they couldn't do it. And local is the answer. I'm not going to reveal everything here.
Sure,
It's
sure.
kind of some secret sauce stuff I'm working on. But like the reality is you will in the future buy more from local than you will from
Wow.
from companies
That's
like
awesome.
Amazon.
Almost sounds impossible to me, but I can't wait to
I
double
hope
click
it
on
happens.
that. I hope it does too. I think it's a great ideal, and I'm sure Tyler's an example to me of the person who's never been wrong
Yes.
about the large macro trends. So Tyler, how can people find you on social media?
Yeah, Leaping.obstacles on Instagram is probably the easiest way.
Leaping,
there's a dot there, Andrew.
Leaping.obstacles.
Yeah.
Okay, Leaping Obstacles on Instagram, and then do you have Facebook groups up or anything else? That
No,
you
just if you go there, like that's
They'll
the
find you.
best way to find
Okay.
me.
Well, obviously,
Yeah.
we don't have a show unless we have great content to provide. You are one of the smartest guys I know, Tyler. I maintain that after 18 years. That's saying something because I've been saying that for 2 decades now. And great to have you on the call. I know you got a hard stop at top of the hour here in about 60 seconds. But any closing comments or questions for our audience or for the next guest on our show?
No, I'd just say keep looking forward. And but yeah, and then happy to come on again. Next time if we plan a little more in advance, I'll come to the studio.
Day of,
Yeah, come on.
bro.
We got
That's how I
space.
roll.
We got space.
Great to have you on the show, Tyler. Thanks.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right, guys, have a great
Good
evening.
night.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.